For John and Elizabeth, July 12, 1986, marked not just the beginning of their lives together, but, tragically, the beginning of their end. A whirlwind romance had culminated in a joyous ceremony, and now they embarked on a honeymoon adventure into the secluded wilderness of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Their destination, a rustic cabin near the pristine waters of Lake Isabel, a place chosen for its serene beauty and the promise of undisturbed solitude. They envisioned days filled with hiking along winding trails, fishing in crystal-clear streams, and evenings spent by a crackling fire, the silence of the forest their only companion. It was meant to be a chapter of pure, unadulterated bliss, a perfect start to their marital journey. But the mountains, ancient and indifferent, held secrets far darker than any they could have imagined. The remote beauty that drew them and would ultimately become the canvas for a chilling mystery, a true crime enigma that would baffle investigators for decades, leaving a trail of shattered hopes and unanswered questions in its wake. The young couple, full of life and eager for their adventure, packed their bags with anticipation. They loaded their modest car with provisions, hiking gear, and perhaps a small camera to capture the indelible moments of their first days as husband and wife. The journey from their suburban home to the heart of the Sierra Nevada was a picturesque drive, the urban sprawl slowly giving way to rolling hills, then towering pines and jagged peaks. The air grew crisper, the scent of pine needles and damp earth filling their lungs. As they finally arrived at the isolated cabin, nestled deep within a thick grove of trees, a sense of peace must have settled over them. It was everything they had hoped for, rustic, charming, and utterly cut off from the demands of the outside world. This was their sanctuary, a temporary haven where time itself seemed to slow down. They unpacked, made the cabin their own, and for a precious few days, they lived out their honeymoon fantasy. But then, silence descended, a far more ominous kind of quiet than the tranquility they had sought. The calls home ceased. The planned return never materialized. And soon, the serene wilderness would transform into a vast, unforgiving search ground. The initial concerns were minor, easily dismissed as an extended honeymoon, perhaps a desire to prolong their escape from reality. But as days turned into a week, and a week bled into two, a gnawing dread began to consume their families. Calls to the cabin went unanswered, the phone ringing out into an empty space. A visit to their home revealed no signs of their return. The honeymooners had simply vanished, leaving behind only the echo of their dreams. What could have happened in such a peaceful, remote setting? Had they been caught in a sudden, violent storm? Had they encountered a dangerous animal? Or was something far more sinister at play, a malevolent force lurking beneath the surface of the idyllic wilderness? These questions hung heavy in the air, transforming the joy of their marriage into an unbearable, agonizing suspense. The innocent allure of the mountains had betrayed them, turning their romantic retreat into a stage for a disappearance that would haunt a community, and indeed, the nation, for years to come. The stage was set, not for a love story, but for a chilling true crime. As the realization of their disappearance hardened into a terrifying certainty, the full weight of the situation crashed down upon their families. Hope, a fragile thing in these circumstances, began to fray. The authorities were notified, and what began as a missing persons report quickly escalated into a full-scale search operation. The Sierra Nevada, a sprawling expanse of dense forest, rugged terrain, and hidden valleys, became the focal point of an increasingly desperate endeavor. Helicopters roared overhead, their powerful rotors slicing through the once tranquil air, their searchlights sweeping across the vast canopy of trees. Ground teams, comprised of seasoned search and rescue volunteers, local law enforcement, and even concerned civilians, fanned out across the wilderness. They meticulously combed through every inch of the known trails, ventured into uncharted territory, and painstakingly examined the areas surrounding Lake Isabel and the remote cabin. Days stretched into weeks, then months, but the vast wilderness yielded little. The cabin itself offered few clues. Everything was in order, suggesting no struggle, no forced entry, nothing to indicate anything other than a peaceful departure. It was as if John and Elizabeth had simply walked out, blending seamlessly into the towering pines and rugged peaks, never to be seen again. The meticulous search efforts, though exhaustive, proved fruitless. The helicopters eventually returned to their hangars, the ground teams dispersed, and the intense media attention gradually faded, leaving only the families to grapple with the agonizing uncertainty. They clung to fragmented theories, each one offering a momentary flicker of hope before being extinguished by the stark reality of their missing loved ones. Had they become lost, disoriented by the vastness of the landscape? Had they suffered an accident, perhaps a fall, or an unexpected encounter with the raw power of nature? The mountains, a place of beauty and tranquility, had become a silent, impenetrable tomb, holding its secrets close. The families, however, refused to surrender to despair. They commissioned private investigators, spent their life savings on continued searches, and clung to every whisper of a potential lead. The emotional toll was immense, a constant, gnawing pain that settled deep within their hearts. Every rustle of leaves, every distant siren, brought a fresh wave of anticipation, only to be followed by the crushing weight of disappointment. The wilderness had taken John and Elizabeth, and it seemed determined to keep them, leaving behind only an unbearable void in the lives of those who loved them. The case grew cold, relegated to the dusty files of unsolved mysteries, a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the enigmatic power of the unknown. 16 years crawled by, each one a stark reminder of the void left by John and Elizabeth's disappearance. The passage of time did little to dull the pain for their families. If anything, it only deepened the sense of injustice and the aching question of what truly happened. The case had long since been categorized as cold, an open wound in the annals of unsolved mysteries. Investigators had exhausted all leads, and the once frequent media updates had ceased entirely. For most, John and Elizabeth were just another statistic, another tragic tale of those swallowed by the unforgiving wilderness. Yet, for their loved ones, hope, however faint, refused to die. They envisioned a miraculous return, a forgotten memory resurfacing, a chance encounter that would finally bring closure. They aged, their hair graying, their faces etched with the lines of prolonged grief, but their hearts still held a flicker of the young couple they had lost. The world moved on, but their lives remained tethered to that summer of 1986, perpetually waiting, perpetually searching. Then, in the unforgiving winter of 2002, a discovery was made that would shatter the brittle calm of those intervening years. A relentless blizzard had blanketed the Sierra Nevada in a thick shroud of snow, transforming the familiar landscape into a stark, white expanse. As the storm finally receded, leaving behind an eerie silence, a group of hikers ventured out, eager to experience the pristine beauty of the freshly fallen snow. They were navigating a particularly remote and rarely traversed section of the mountains, a place far from any established trails, when one of them spotted something unusual, a small protrusion of faded fabric barely visible against the blinding white. Curiosity piqued, they cautiously approached, their boots crunching on the frozen crust. As they dug away the snow, a more distinct shape emerged, a backpack, tattered and weather-beaten, but unmistakably man-made. The very sight of it sent a chill down their spines. Such an item in such a desolate location spoke volumes. The fabric was stiff with ice and years of exposure, but beneath the accumulated layers of snow and time, a name tag was discernible, faded but still legible: John. The shock was immediate, a collective gasp echoing through the silent, snow-covered landscape. This wasn't just any backpack. This was a relic from a ghost, a tangible link to a story that had been lost to time and memory for over a decade and a half. The implications were chilling, signaling that the wilderness had finally decided to relinquish one of its closely guarded secrets. The search for answers, long dormant, was about to be reignited with a terrifying new urgency. The discovery of John's backpack was a visceral jolt, a sudden and brutal awakening to a past that had refused to stay buried. It was a stark confirmation that the initial assumptions of a simple wilderness accident might have been tragically, horribly wrong. The discovery of John's backpack in such a remote and unforgiving landscape immediately raised a red flag. This was no casual discard. It was a deliberate abandonment, or perhaps a desperate loss. Within hours, forensic teams and seasoned investigators, whose faces were now older, but whose memories of the 1986 disappearance remained sharp, descended upon the site. The sheer isolation of the location immediately dispelled any lingering notions of a simple hiking mishap. This was a place few, if any, recreational trekkers would stumble upon naturally. The backpack itself, though severely degraded by years of harsh weather, was meticulously examined. Every flap, every pocket was carefully searched for clues. Inside, among a few personal items, was a small, crudely fashioned wooden pendant. It was a simple, heart-shaped piece, engraved with the initials J+E, a poignant, heartbreaking memento of their honeymoon, confirming beyond shadow of a doubt that this belonged to the missing couple. The significance of the pendant was not lost on the investigators. It spoke of a journey, of a bond, and now, of a terrifying end. But the most unsettling discovery within the backpack was not something missing, but something present, a rusted, antique-looking arrowhead. It was unlike any modern hunting or survival tool, its design pointing to an ancient, almost primordial method of attack or defense. This single artifact ripped through the previous theories of an accidental death, immediately injecting a chilling, human element into the mystery. What was an arrowhead doing in a honeymooner's backpack? Had it been a souvenir? Or was it something far more sinister, an instrument of violence? The weight of this new evidence pressed heavily on the investigation. The serene wilderness, once believed to be the neutral stage for a tragic accident, now felt imbued with an unsettling aura, a silent witness to a potential crime. The presence of the arrowhead ignited a terrifying new line of inquiry. Could John and Elizabeth have encountered someone in the vast emptiness of the Sierra Nevada? Someone with hostile intent? Someone who used a weapon from a forgotten past? The peaceful narrative of a couple lost to nature was violently replaced by the chilling possibility of a brutal, premeditated act. The implications were profound and terrifying. This wasn't merely a search and rescue operation anymore. This was a murder investigation, a cold case suddenly, brutally, thawed by the unforgiving hand of winter. The wilderness held more than just their bodies. It held the terrifying truth of their final moments. The discovery of the backpack and, more profoundly, the arrowhead ripped open the cold case, transforming it from a mere disappearance into a full-blown homicide investigation. The initial assumption of an unfortunate hiking accident was utterly annihilated, replaced by the grim certainty of foul play. The sheer premeditation suggested by the ancient weapon sent a shiver down the spines of even the most seasoned investigators. This wasn't a crime of passion or a sudden, chaotic encounter. It hinted at something darker, something planned, or at the very least, a person using a tool of violence deliberately and effectively. The remote location, once seen as an obstacle to finding their remains, now became a key piece of the puzzle. It spoke of a killer who sought isolation, who chose a place where their heinous act would remain undisturbed, hidden by the very beauty of nature. The investigators, now spurred by a renewed sense of purpose and a chilling new direction, turned their attention to the vast, silent expanse around the discovery site. This was a painstaking process, a needle-in-a-haystack search, but now they had a more defined area and a terrifying new context. Specialized search teams were deployed, equipped with ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs, their keen senses honed to detect the faint, telltale signs of human remains. The snow, which had initially concealed the backpack, now acted as a morbid blanket, potentially preserving other crucial evidence. As the snow slowly began to melt, revealing the frozen earth beneath, the landscape began to yield more of its secrets. The first remains were discovered mere yards from where John's backpack had lain buried for 16 years. It was a chilling confirmation of their worst fears, the skeletal fragments a stark testament to the brutality of their final moments. The remains, though incomplete, bore signs of trauma, consistent with a violent attack. Among them, inextricably linked to the decaying fabric of clothing, was Elizabeth's pendant, a twin to John's, its simple J+E inscription now a haunting epitaph. The discovery of their bodies confirmed the murder, but the motive remained elusive, shrouded in the silence of the mountains. Was it a random act of violence, a territorial dispute, or something far more personal and terrifying? The investigation expanded, drawing in forensic anthropologists, ballistics experts, and criminal profilers. Every piece of evidence, no matter how small, was meticulously analyzed, cross-referenced, and debated. The chilling presence of the arrowhead became central to their theories. Was it a signature weapon, a calling card, or was it merely a tool readily available to someone living off the grid, someone with a deep, unsettling connection to the wilderness and its ancient ways? The wilderness, which had been a symbol of their honeymoon bliss, now stood as a silent, unyielding monument to their tragic end, its towering trees and jagged peaks guarding the terrible truth of what transpired on that ill-fated summer day in 1986. The final chapter of their story, though grim, was finally beginning to unfold, each piece of evidence a whisper from the past, piecing together a narrative of love, loss, and unspeakable horror. The long wait for answers was over, but the full horror of the truth was just beginning to emerge. As forensic experts meticulously pieced together the fragments of evidence unearthed from the snowy expanse, a horrifying picture began to emerge. The skeletal remains confirmed that John and Elizabeth had not merely succumbed to the elements. They had been brutally murdered. The nature of the trauma on their bones, though subject to years of decomposition and animal interference, was consistent with multiple, severe blows, suggesting a frenzied and violent assault. The arrowhead, initially a mysterious anomaly, now took on a terrifying significance. While the precise cause of death couldn't be definitively linked to that specific artifact due to the degradation of the remains, its presence suggested a primitive, almost ritualistic violence that transcended typical criminal motivations. This wasn't a quick, clean kill. It was savage, personal. Investigators began to delve into the lives of John and Elizabeth, searching for any potential enemies, any past grievances, anything that could explain such a targeted and brutal attack. But their backgrounds were unremarkable. They were a young, happy couple with no known conflicts or dangerous associations. Their only crime seemed to be their choice of a secluded honeymoon destination. This led the investigation down a darker, more unsettling path. The possibility of a random predator, someone who stalked the isolated reaches of the Sierra Nevada, waiting for unsuspecting victims. The concept of an unknown, unseen threat lurking in the beautiful wilderness was far more terrifying than a personal vendetta. The profile of such a killer began to form. Someone intimately familiar with the rugged terrain, capable of living off the grid, and possessing a profound disregard for human life. The antique arrowhead, perhaps a family heirloom or a self-made tool, became a chilling clue to this person's mindset, their connection to an older, more brutal way of existence. Years turned into decades, and despite the renewed vigor of the investigation, the killer remained elusive. The dense forest, the shifting seasons, and the passage of time had conspired to erase any clearer trail. Yet, the story of John and Elizabeth, the honeymooners lost to the mountains, endured. Their tragic end became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the hidden dangers that can lurk even in the most serene landscapes. Their families, though finally receiving the grim closure of knowing their loved one's fate, were left with the agonizing burden of a justice unserved. The image of the young couple, full of hope and dreams on their wedding day, contrasted sharply with the brutal reality of their demise, forever etched into the collective memory of a community haunted by their story. The Sierra Nevada, a majestic symbol of nature's grandeur, also became a silent monument to a heinous crime, its towering peaks and whispering pines guarding the terrible secret of a killer who vanished as completely as their victims once had. The case of John and Elizabeth serves as a haunting testament to the enduring mysteries of true crime, where sometimes, even with the discovery of the ultimate truth, the perpetrator remains a phantom, swallowed by the vast, indifferent wilderness. The tale ends not with a capture, but with the chilling echo of what was lost and the enduring question of why.